Drug kingpin Frank Usher is back in handcuffs. He got a life sentence for murdering and beheading 3 people back in the 1980s.
But he's been a free man ever since a successful appeal in 1994 until now.
How did you acquire the property? Would you mind telling us that, sir?
Well, if I tell you that, then you'll know my business.
I wanted to see his expression on his face that he had slipped, and I wanted to let him know, you out of there.
In the ever-evolving saga of Detroit's criminal underworld, Part 3 of our documentary series peels back the layers on some of the city's most enigmatic and feared figures. From the ruthless ambition of Frank Usher to the flamboyant rise and fall of Maserati Rick, these stories delve into the heart of Detroit's complex web of drug trafficking, extortion, and violent power struggles. Through first-hand accounts, expert commentary, and rare archival footage, we explore the lives of individuals who, for better or worse, left an indelible mark on the Motor City's history.
He's one of the most notorious crime figures in Detroit history. Federal agents raided his house, and then later he saw a judge here in federal court. It's a raid in a quiet Southfield neighborhood Thursday morning at the home of Frank Lee Usher. Police once believed he may have been involved in 15 murders. He was convicted of 3. Also previously convicted of aggravated assault and a felon in possession of a firearm. Usher was sent to Jackson Prison, sentenced to life for a triple murder that stunned the Motor City. In 1979, 2 men and a woman were shot multiple times at the Federated Democratic Club, an East Side Detroit social club. The bodies of the 3 adults were found in a van near the club. All 3 were beheaded and their hands cut off. Usher was one of 5 charged with the murders. But after serving 15 years, Frank Usher had his conviction overturned on appeal by a technicality in 1994.
Frank Usher, also known as Big Frank Nitty, was a notable figure in Detroit's organized crime scene, particularly in the late 1970s. He was recognized for leading the city's black mob and was known for his involvement in various criminal activities including drugs, gambling, prostitution, and extortion. Usher's reputation in both the street and local media saw significant growth during this period, partly due to his mentorship and financial backing by the Giacalone brothers, who were key figures in Detroit's Italian mafia, the Taccozarelli crime family. Usher's criminal enterprise, referred to as Murder Row, was modeled after the Italian mafia and was active in Detroit's Midtown area. Headquartered at the Michigan Federated Democratic Social Club, this group was used for muscle work by the Giacalones well into the 1980s. A major incident tied to Usher was the July 1979 Michigan Federated Democratic Social Club massacre, where 3 individuals were killed and beheaded, a crime that led to Usher's conviction, which was later overturned on appeal. Despite his acquittal, Usher faced further legal troubles, including a 2015 arrest for a drug, although the charges were subsequently dropped. Usher's criminal career and the violent nature of his organization's activities highlight the complex web of organized crime in Detroit during this era, marked by alliances and conflicts within and between different criminal groups. Demetrius Holloway was a notable figure in Detroit's drug scene during the late 1980s, renowned for his business acumen and the violent circumstances surrounding his life and death. Described as a businessman's gangster with a lethal reputation, Holloway was both feared and respected. His attorney at the time, Steve Fishman, noted that Holloway possessed natural qualities that could have made him successful in the legitimate business world had his circumstances been different. Holloway's rise in the criminal underworld was marked by strategic alliances and violent confrontations. After serving a 5-year federal prison sentence, he returned to the streets in 1985 and quickly established himself as a major player in the drug trade. Holloway was particularly adept at maintaining a facade of legitimacy, investing his drug profits into legitimate businesses like a chain of athletic shoe stores known as a Sports Jam and acquiring significant real estate holdings. The late 1980s were tumultuous times for Holloway, as he found himself embroiled in conflicts with rival organizations and under intense scrutiny from law enforcement. The murder of his close friend and associate, Maserati Rick, in 1988 was a significant blow to Holloway. In a dramatic turn of events, Holloway staged his own kidnapping to avoid the violence that had claimed his friend's life. later marrying his girlfriend in Las Vegas during his time away from Detroit. Holloway's life came to a tragic end on October 8, 1990, when he was shot in the back of the head while shopping at the Broadway clothing store in downtown Detroit. Despite being armed and carrying a significant amount of cash, Holloway was unable to defend himself. The murder was later attributed to Lester Milton and his brother Thomas, who were convicted a decade after the crime. Holloway's influence and the dramatic nature of his life and death continue to resonate in Detroit's cultural memory, with his story being referenced in rap lyrics and the subject of a documentary film titled Detroit Connection 3: Last Man Standing.
People that I was running with was committing crimes, and I just kind of fell into the groove. I started emulating what I seen. I just stopped going to school altogether, and I started working for my brother-in-law, selling penny caps, which was heroin at that particular time, And I believe when he taught me the game, he didn't know that I was going to elevate the game to the level that I did. I feel like he was trying to do something for me to keep me off the streets, so to speak, because I was out here doing a lot of petty crime.
Milton "Butch" Jones was a significant figure in Detroit's criminal history, particularly as a founder and the eventual leader of Young Boys Incorporated, YBI. YBI, known for its innovative and brutal approach to drug trafficking, included employing minors to avoid legal repercussions. Jones, along with other founders, established YBI in the late 1970s, leveraging their organization's structure to dominate drug trafficking in Detroit. Butch Jones was known for his menacing demeanor and ruled YBI with an iron fist, employing violence and intimidation to maintain control and discipline within the gang. Under his leadership, YBI was organized much like a Fortune 500 company, with a clear hierarchical structure and diversified operations across different street factions, each responsible for various aspects of the gang's activities. One notable aspect of YBI under Jones was its move towards independence from the mafia for drug supplies, a strategy that significantly boosted their operations. This shift allowed YBI to control a vast majority of drug trafficking within Detroit, with innovative marketing strategies including branding their drug products with catchy names. However, the gang's success also led to its downfall, as internal conflicts fueled by greed, jealousy, and resentment tore the organization apart. The government's focused efforts on dismantling YBI through a series of federal indictments further contributed to the gang's collapse by the late 1980s. Jones's influence extended beyond YBI's operational strategies. He also had significant encounters with law enforcement, particularly with certain corrupt officers within the Detroit Police Department, who would seize drugs, money, or weapons during raids for their personal gain. The rise and fall of Butch Jones and YBI marked a significant chapter in Detroit's history, reshaping the landscape of drug trafficking and law enforcement's approach to gang-related crime in the city. Henry Blaze Marzette was a significant figure in Detroit's criminal underworld, especially noted for his transition from a decorated police officer to one of the city's most notorious drug kingpins. Marzette's nickname Blaze was indicative of the impact he had on Detroit's drug scene, with a reputation for lighting up the landscape around him with his activities. His death in 1972 from kidney failure marked the end of a tumultuous period in Detroit's history, characterized by a heroin war that claimed over 150 lives in less than 20 months. Marzette's journey into the criminal world was as dramatic as it was unexpected. Initially, he was a star high school football player and a Korean War hero, who later joined the Detroit Police Department's narcotics squad. His career took a turn when he went to prison for extorting drug dealers. Upon his release, he quickly climbed the ranks in the underworld, establishing extensive drug, gambling, and extortion rackets across Detroit. Marzette was known for his lavish lifestyle, hobnobbing with celebrities, and owning real estate globally. His penchant for mink coats set a trend in Detroit's drug culture that persisted for years. Marzette's ambition led him to attempt to unify Detroit's African-American heroin dealers to exclude the Italian mafia from the city's drug trade. This led to a meeting in 1970, which quickly soured and escalated into a violent conflict known as the Heroin War. highlighting the deep divides within the city's criminal elements. In contrast to Marzette's criminal empire, Operation Backbone was an undercover FBI investigation in the late 1980s and early 1990s aimed at uncovering police corruption in Detroit. The operation revealed deep-seated corruption within the Detroit Police Department, leading to the arrest and conviction of several officers involved in drug trafficking activities. The operation also highlighted the systemic roots of narcotics corruption in Detroit, tracing back to the 1950s when officers were first implicated in heroin trafficking networks. Rockin' Reggie Brown was associated with the Detroit drug scene during the 1980s. He was connected with Demetrius Holloway, a significant figure in Detroit's drug trade at the time. Holloway recruited the Brown brothers, including Rockin' Reggie, and their best friend's crew as part of his enforcement wing, indicating Reggie's involvement in Holloway's operations and the broader dynamics of Detroit's drug world during this tumultuous period.
Billy Joe, Willie, and Otis, the four Chambers brothers.
You say their names, say Chambers are looking for you, hey, they gone, they running, they be scared, you know. They will kill you in a minute with no hesitation.
The Chambers are accused of operating a $3 million a week drug operation that once accounted for half of Detroit's crack cocaine trade. Authorities say the Chambers were so arrogant they took home videos to show off their artillery, count their illegal drug money, and show off their house.
This is the dining room. This is a 24-karat gold faucet.
The Chambers brothers and 10 associates are now on trial in a U.S. District Court in Detroit. They are charged with cocaine conspiracy and tax evasion. In court, witnesses accuse the Chambers of keeping members in line with such tactics as pushing them out windows and mangling their fingers for sampling.
The Chambers brothers, consisting of Larry, Billy Joe, Willie Lee, and Otis Chambers, established one of the largest drug empires in Detroit during the 1980s. Originating from Lee County, Arkansas, the brothers were drawn to Detroit in search of better opportunities and eventually became deeply involved in the drug trade, particularly the sale of. Their operation was known for its corporate-like structure, employing young drug runners in a highly organized manner, which was a significant factor in the spread of within the city. Their drug network became notorious for its violence and ruthlessness, which was met with equally forceful police action. The Chambers brothers' use of minors for drug trafficking in designated apartments and houses was a notable aspect of their operation, highlighting the exploitation of youth in their criminal activities. Their approach to drug sales included consumer-based initiatives such as discount coupons and 2-for-1 deals, mimicking corporate marketing strategies to boost their drug sales. The fall of the Chambers brothers' drug empire drew significant attention, including from then-presidential candidate Bill Clinton, who mentioned their takedown in his nomination speech. The extensive reach and impact of their operation not only highlighted the severe problem in Detroit, but also the challenges in policing and dismantling such organized and entrenched drug networks. Johnny Curry led a significant drug trafficking operation in Detroit during the 1980s, alongside his brother Leo Curry. Their operation, known as the Curry Trafficking Ring, was primarily involved in trafficking. This gang gained considerable attention partly due to their connection with Richard Worsh Jr., also known as White Boy Rick, who was an FBI informant and portrayed as Johnny Curry's protege. The operation was substantial, with law enforcement authorities estimating it to be one of the largest operations in Detroit during that time. Johnny Curry's operations were cautious and lasted longer than most, partly due to bribing the police, which was a common practice to evade law enforcement scrutiny. The gang was eventually indicted by a federal grand jury in the summer of 1987, leading to various prison sentences for its members. Johnny Curry's relationship with Kathy Volson, the niece of Detroit's then-Mayor Coleman Young, also brought political connections into play, complicating the law enforcement efforts against his operations. It was alleged that some police officials, seeking favor with the mayor's office, would illegally provide confidential narcotics files related to Curry's drug operations. The film White Boy Rick delves into this period, with Johnny "Lil Man" Curry being portrayed as a key figure in the Detroit drug scene. and his interactions with Richard Wirch Jr. The film explores the dynamics of the Curry brothers' operations, highlighting the complexity of drug trafficking networks, law enforcement challenges, and the socio-political backdrop of Detroit in the 1980s.
You're under constant surveillance. There have been all kinds of stories about your alleged connections with the underworld drug market. What's your reaction, Mr. Jackson?
Well, as far as the connection, that's 100% false. And as far as the surveillance, I welcome, you understand, anybody who feel like they want to waste their time watching me, you understand?
How did you acquire the property? Would you mind telling us that, sir?
Well, if I tell you that, then you know my business.
Eddie Jackson, also known as the Fat Man, was a major figure in Detroit's heroin trade during the late 1960s and early 1970s. Along with Courtney Brown, he led one of the largest rings in the United States. Their operation, known for its strategic approach rather than reliance on violence, was a significant part of Detroit's drug scene and is considered one of the largest drug rings in the city's history. The duo's empire, grossing millions in today's dollars, rose from Detroit's old Black Bottom and Paradise Valley neighborhoods to dominate the city's narcotics trade. Their story is detailed in the documentary Motown Mafia, which explores not only Jackson and Brown's rise to power, but also the broader narrative of Detroit itself during this tumultuous period. The documentary highlights how Jackson, with his charismatic and generous nature, became a beloved figure in the drug kingpin circles, contrasting with other notorious figures of the time who might have leaned more heavily into violence or eventually became informants. Despite their significant impact on Detroit's drug trade, Jackson and Brown managed to maintain a degree of separation from the kind of widespread violence often associated with such large-scale operations. Their approach to the narcotics business and the subsequent legacy they left behind in Detroit's history offer a unique perspective on the dynamics of drug trafficking and its implications for the communities involved. Maserati Rick, born Richard Earl Carter on July 31, 1959, was a prominent figure in Detroit's drug scene during the height of the city's crack era in the 1980s. His nickname, Maserati Rick, stemmed from his love for Maserati cars and his flashy lifestyle, embodying the dramatic flair for which he was known even in death. Initially a car thief, Carter's criminal career took off after the conviction of Sylvester Silmori, a major supplier for Detroit's first significant drug gang, Young Boys Inc. This event opened up opportunities for Carter and his associates to rise in the drug trade. By the mid-1980s, Maserati Rick was supplying numerous drug houses on Detroit's east side. He was known for his lavish lifestyle and for maintaining residences that matched his kingpin image, including a fortified flat near East Jefferson Avenue and a plush condominium on the Detroit International Riverfront. To launder the proceeds from his drug operations, Carter invested in car washes and barber shops, which served as fronts for his illicit activities. Maserati Rick's operations were so extensive that federal agents labeled his organization as Kilo Men, indicating their ability to deal in large quantities of drugs. However, his criminal activities made him many enemies, leading to violent confrontations, especially with his former friend, Edward Big Ed Hansard. Their rivalry escalated to numerous public shootouts, culminating in Carter's murder on September 12, 1988, in a hospital where he was recovering from gunshot wounds. His funeral was as flamboyant as his life, with Carter laid to rest in a $16,000 casket designed to resemble a Mercedes-Benz, complete with spinning tires and BBS rims, at Peace Chapel and then Elmwood Cemetery, the final resting place for many of Detroit's notable individuals. Maserati Rick's legacy continues to influence popular culture, with references to him appearing in music and television, underscoring his lasting impact on the narrative of Detroit's criminal history. The tales of Detroit's most dangerous gangsters unfold like chapters in a gritty urban epic, each character contributing to the city's notorious reputation in the annals of American crime. Frank Usher's calculated leadership, Maserati Rick's opulent defiance, Demetrius Holloway's business-savvy brutality, Milton Butch Jones's pioneering gang strategies, and the tragic trajectory of Henry Blaze Marzette, among others, paint a complex picture of ambition, loyalty, and betrayal. As our series concludes, the legacy of these figures serves as a stark reminder of the cyclical nature of organized crime and the enduring impact it has on the communities caught in its wake.